Well, of course, it's an honor to be able to be here, and for this occasion, love Terry so much. When I was asked, I was given the responsibility. Each one of us has a specific area, and they all cross over so much. But my request, the request to me, was to talk about Terry Gyger in terms of his impact on ministry. Well, that's all you've heard. That's his life. So I don't have anything else to say. That's it. It'll be brief. I sat down and I said, all right, if I think of Terry Gyger, what comes to my mind? What do I think about? I wrote these words down. I said, humble leader. And he is. Innovator. Strategist. Church planter. Pastor. Counselor. Mentor. Certainly to me. He's somewhere in the middle of the age to be either my brother or my father. And I have to say, God used him in a real specific way in that regard, personally. Husband, father, and the list would go on and on. You know that. It could go on and on. I'm going to share 4 occasions, and again, there's a lot of overlap with what's already been said. That's one of the difficulties. You don't know what's coming on the screen, what people are going to say, and you don't want to just be repetitive. But the first is talked about how he would step down. Here I'm a young pastor in Atlanta. I'm trying to figure out how you pastor a church, and we wanted to be a church planting church, and how do you do that, and how do you, and how do you? And here comes Terry Gyger after the history of you've already heard of what he's done. He then steps down from M&A to be an assistant pastor at this new church called Perimeter Church. What in the world is he doing that for? But he did. Number 2. And what I'm sharing is basically the sum total of all the things he's been doing. You could hit every one in my list, but during that time at Perimeter, God had a reason for him to be there in many different capacities. But he was there for me, I'm convinced, in a big way. I'll never forget, he navigated me through a ministry crisis that caused me the greatest pain and heartache that I have ever experienced in ministry. And I'm sure that I ever will. And he walked me through that. And he was there alongside as a counselor, as an encourager. And I was ready to leave the ministry. I didn't know the ministry could be that painful. And when it hit me in the hardest way, Terry was there. Always be thankful. We were church planting. And we started all these churches, and we had some challenges in some of those churches. And so it came about where 2 of our plants over the time had become unhealthy, as an understatement. And Terry steps down, and he goes into those churches, becomes their pastor for a season, and brought incredible life to both of those congregations. Amazing how God used him. The 4th, you've heard from John Yinchko on the screen, who's here tonight as well, that the gathering of friends, as we call it, and he talked about why we had that and what it did and so forth, and all the people that were a part. Nobody knows, outside of John here in this room, nobody knows the difference in 15 pastors as young pastors who were struggling to figure it out on their own, all of a sudden had a brotherhood that would never end, a brotherhood that remains to this day. Numerous are in heaven now. But I'll tell you, it was a big part of our lives. I remember Terry. He came together, brought us together, and he'd just sit there. and he'd let us talk. And then every once in a while, hey, Terry, what do you think? And he'd give us the answer. Tim Keller told us in the latter years that he was able to be with us, and before his cancer, he said that there was no gathering, there was no appointment on his calendar that ever came before or of greater importance to him than that 3-day period when we would gather together and just see the brotherhood come alive. That would have never happened. It would have never happened outside of what Terry was doing. Well, Terry has done. In fact, let me make this comment. There's a statement which was made that I picked up on early in my ministry, and it impacted my life. It impacted my ministry like very few statements could do. It was from a missionary statesman that some of you may not even know who he is, named John R. Mott. God used that man in an amazing, amazing way. And he made a statement that, in my opinion, is just a partial truth. It's probably not a standalone without some explanation, but in certain ways, very, very accurate. And this is a statement. He said, "He who does the work is not near as impactful as those who multiply the doers." Now, God calls people in different capacities. And you don't have to be one of these great multipliers in terms of doing amazing things like Terry has done. But there's a lot of truth there. You multiply the doers, you make the greater impact. And that was the case with Terry. Terry has and is doing both simultaneously. He really is, if you think about it. I mean, he's doing the work and he's multiplying the doers. We shouldn't be shocked to see what has happened. Well, Terry, I speak on behalf of these many churches that you have touched that can't be here tonight, and on behalf of the organizations that you have, if not started, impacted significantly, and the people like myself. And I know every one of them would say, just as you've already heard, thank you so much. And we do love you. Thank you.